It's Heart Standard. It's Craig Cairns. And as you will have probably already noticed from the video title and image, earlier I spoke to Hearts legend Paul Ritchie. We spoke about how he still manages to follow Hearts from the west coast of America. I got his thoughts on this season so far, and with an eye on the upcoming semi-final against Aberdeen. We revisited the 1996 semi-final, which he was part of, and which was the last time Hearts and Aberdeen met at Hampden. But I didn't want to keep him waiting about while I gave the word from our sponsors. So just before we get started, I will just say that Heart Standard is brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to S1 Jobs and upload your CV today. With thousands of jobs across Edinburgh and the surrounding area, you'll find the one at S1 Jobs. Start your search today. Enjoy the show. Well, good start with the background noise. We are now delighted to be joined by a true Hearts legend. He spent 8 years at the club, making 162 appearances. After coming through the ranks and growing up a supporter of the club, he was part of the team that ended a 42-year wait for a major trophy with a win in the Scottish Cup in 1998. It was capped 7 times for Scotland. He played for Man City before it was cool. He was inducted into the Hearts Hall of Fame in 2018. It is, of course, Paul Ritchie. Paul, how are you? Thank you for coming on.
Very good, sir. Good morning to you. Great. I don't know, there might be a little bit noisy in the background. I've got a crazy ass old boxer running about, scraping clothes, and my little boy's out in the swing with his grandma. So, life is good. Life is good.
Yeah, I don't mind. I wasn't expecting it before I'd got a word in, but we're all good. It's honestly we'll work around it. It's not a problem at all. So just firstly, before we get into things, what is it you're up to today? You've been all over North America since you left Scotland. You're over on the west coast at the moment. What is it you're doing over there?
Yeah, as I said, I'm an academy director at a youth club here in San Diego. Part of MLS Next. Got 6 teams from U13s to U19s that compete at the highest level of US football, soccer, however you want to put it. But yeah, we've built a program here. Been at this club now 10 years and built the academy program from scratch. So my main role now is just to oversee the 6 teams, coach 1 or 2 teams at a time, try and get these kids into college when they graduate high school, and then 1 or 2 kids get onto that sort of pro pathway. So yeah, living a really enjoyable life at the moment, coaching. As I said, missed the pro game, but as I said, get a lot of as I said, it's a great life to have. It's still involved in the coaching every day, and as I said, it's a great place to live.
Are you? Is that you kind of settled in San Diego now? Because you said you've been there 10 years now. Is that home for you now?
I would say it will be. Yeah, it's a hard place to leave. I do miss home. Obviously, I've got family back home in Scotland. As I say, we come back as often as we can. But as I say, it's a fantastic place to live. As I say, the weather for my kids here, as I say, they don't want for anything. As I said, it's sun 350 days of the year. Temperatures are great. No, as I said, never coaching the rain. But yeah, it's a beautiful place to live, and yeah, I find it very difficult to move from here, to be honest.
How often is it that you get back to Edinburgh? I'm sure I saw you just between Dalry and Gorgie a couple of months ago, I think it was. We were going up to like that social club or something. I think you had a buggy.
That's right. I was back. We're back for Christmas. Usually try and get back at least once a year.
Right.
Usually now everybody wants to come and visit us here in California, which is understandable. Get the family holidays. My 2 older boys, just had one of them, and my grandson. They've just been over and back, and then my other son looks to come over in the summer. So try and get back at least, as I say, once a year. My mum's, as I said, she comes over. So she comes over for 3 months a year now. So she's over just now. So the fact that she comes over and visits so often, as I said, it's hard to travel with kids, as you can imagine. But as I said, try and get back to see the family at least once a year.
Do you manage to keep an eye on Hearts much while you're out there?
Oh yeah, try and watch every game. I think with the timings here,
really?
I managed to get the games, most games in the morning, at the weekends before I go to work and before I coach. You know, you've got all these channels now that, as I say, every game is live, and that's the good thing about here in the States. Every single football match is live. So I've watched them in Europe. I've watched, as I said, derbies. So as I say, when when I remember, and I've got kids on me doing my head in, and then I get an opportunity to get the TV on and watch at least a half or a full game. So yeah, definitely keep on top of everything.
What's been your thoughts about this season?
I thought it was a tough start. I thought, as I said, they had a real tough start. When we came home at Christmas, we managed to get 3 games in over the Christmas period. My 2 boys still go and watch every week. As I said, Lockie looks after them for the home games, and then they put all their well-earned money to go and watch Hearts in Europe. So the 2 of them go together to watch all the European games, and as I say, something that they've done for a few years now. So they had a few trips last year, but yeah, the start of the season was tough. As I said, when Neil came in, as I said, it was a little difficult at the time, but I think they managed to recruit well in January, and they've given themselves a little sort of kickstart again, and they're getting there. I'm just don't know sure now if they'll get to that sort of top 3 or 4 spot that they were looking for. I definitely think they should make the top half. I think that should be the minimum aim. But I think a little bit disappointing again, as I said. I think it's one of those ones where we, as Hearts supporters and ex-Hearts players, you're always looking for a little bit more. And for me, as I said, I think it's one of those ones. I think the players that he's brought in January have definitely improved the squad. Little Wilson's done fantastically well. Penrice has been, for me, really good all season. So they've got the foundations there to kick on again. It's just that little bit of inconsistency, and I think there's a lot of teams much of a muchness now in the SPL, and I think it's one of those ones where everybody's cutting each other's throats. So it's very difficult, and that's, as I said, it's hard to say, but for what Hibs have done and got the run that they went on, I'd say anybody's capable of doing that. And if you can do that, then, as I said, anything's possible. So I think the possibilities are still there. I think the Scottish Cup run will be, it's a great opportunity. It's, as I said, a tie at Hampden against Aberdeen will be, as I said, a great day out for the Hearts fans. And as I said, it's a game that Hearts can definitely win to get back to another cup final.
It seems that what you're saying there about the good transfers, and there's a wee bit of grumblings at the moment about Critchley, especially kind of like big games and stuff. But for me, it still seems a bit early for that, and there has been some positive signs there. You came through at a time where Jim Jeffries had a bit of a clear out, and he took a couple of seasons to kind of get the team that he wanted and things like that. I know that there's not the same patience in modern football as there was back then that I'm talking about. But do you feel that there is a kind of patience needed with this with this setup, with the new kind of like the Jamestown thing coming in and all that?
I think you're right. I think it's a cutthroat business, and it's, as I said, it's a results orientated business, and I think that's one of the reasons that I sort of ended up taking a step back from that sort of pro side of the game. And say from a personal point of view, when I was coaching in MLS with Martin Rennie at Vancouver, as I said, we've done well for a basically new franchise in MLS, but because we weren't at the level that the ownership group wanted, and the supporters, as I said, we still made playoffs, we got to cup finals, and it was still not enough for them. And then all of a sudden you're out of job, and it's like, wow, it's like you don't know where to go. So from my personal point of view, it was like, well, coaching youth soccer is, as I said, is far more sustainable. It's like, as I said, now I can sort of plan a life. I haven't been a pro football player and a pro coach. As I said, you don't know where you could be in 2 months. And it's getting worse. As I said, I look at some of my mates who played with, and they were in jobs, out of jobs, in jobs, out of jobs. And I'm thinking to myself, when is that going to sort of end? Clubs, supporters quite rightly demand high demands out of the players and out of the managers, because they want the best for the club. They're sometimes very, very fickle. Hearts supporters are, as we know, are very, very demanding. And I know that as being a player there, as I said. And I say, for me, if they're paying the money, I think they've got a right to do that within reason. I think the clubs within reason have to be a little bit more, as I said, trusting of what, if they've got to spend money to bring in coaches and the way they're going to do things, they've got to give this time. As I said, you're right. When Jim Jeffries came in, as I said, Tommy McLean had basically ran that club, as I say, right into the bare bones. As I said, I remember, as I said, Walter Kidd playing and stuff like that. It was a clear out needed, and Jim got time. And I think with the time that Jim got, the players that he brought in, the quality he brought in from outside the UK, and then obviously the batch of young kids that are coming through. So it does take time, and I think it's a very, very fine balance, because at the end of the day, this league is so tight. And as I said, cut the bags out. I remember September, October, November, Hearts were bang bottom of the league, and that can't be sustainable. As I said, for me, the change happened at the right time. As I said, he got the players in it he wanted, and then all of a sudden it gave him a little kickstart. Yes, you're right. I think big games, we don't have that ability to overcome the top teams and win the games that really matter. And that's, as I said, that should take time. I think these players who come in, and I'm a big believer. I think when the biggest thing that Jim did, the players that he brought in bought into the Hearts sort of culture right away. As I said, when you look at Gilles Rousset, Stefan Adam, Salvatore, Pasquale Bruno, those four specifically, Thomas Flegel, they within probably a month knew what it was to play for Hearts, and that's back. And I think that's a credit to those guys, a credit to Jim for doing the recruiting properly, Jim and Billy. But as I said, that was back in the day. I think football's changed, and it's these foreign players who come in. You'll get one or two right, and the players who come in. But playing for Hearts is a big deal. You have to understand that it's different playing for Hearts than any other team in Scotland. For me, it's, as I said, the stadium's fantastic. It's right on top of you. If you don't like the criticism, if you can't deal with the criticism, then it's probably not the place for you, because, as I said, you can hear everything. And as I said, Hearts supporters are very, very demanding, and rightly so. So I'm hoping that the recruiting and how they're doing it is different again. It's one of those sort of the stats-based players, and time will tell if in the long term it works out. Is Neil Critchley the man, the personality to lead Hearts? As I say, time will tell. As I say, I think you've got to give him the remainder of this season. We're still in the Scottish Cup, and then see where he goes over the summer with the recruiting again, and see what he can bring in. And then it's up to him to make sure that when he's got that team to select and the best players, that he can come up with a system and a way to play that is successful most weeks.
Yeah, one of the things you said there was something else I was going to ask about. I mean, some of it's down to the players as well. It's obviously not down to managers, but I mean, what does it take to kind of, I don't know, for want of a better way of asking it, to kind of be a Hearts player? Is it about that mentality? Because there's lots of players that have come and had the talent, but they've not. And you could maybe say there's a few in the squad this season that signed the summer and not quite made it. But is it a mentality thing that some players lack and some players do when it comes to playing?
I think it's a mentality and they actually care. So I think it's a mentality, and you've got to find players who care. I think the game now has changed so much. And I think, as I say, that I'm never going to mention players and be critical, but there's a number.
Yeah, of course.
There's a number of players that Hearts have brought in who were absolutely sensational for their previous clubs and playing at the same level. So for me, if you're leaving, I'm not being disrespectful to other teams in the SPL, but if you're leaving a lesser quality team and coming to play for Hearts, and you were a standout last year and the year before, you would expect you to come to a better team, much better environment to shine. And it's just no work for one or two players. And then for me, they're not bad players. They don't become bad players overnight. You would hope they would become better players in the Hearts environment. So for me, it's down to the mentality and do they care enough. I think, as I said, the mental side of the game now has been highly sort of documented on players being, as I said, if you don't have a mental toughness, then, as I said, it's very, very difficult to overcome any sort of adversity. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in this little spiral, and whatever you try doesn't go well, and the punters are getting a little bit frustrated, and then all of a sudden you go for this sort of top potential player to someone who's really struggling to get in the 18 every week. And it's not down to becoming a bad player overnight. It's just that inability to handle that environment on a weekly basis.
So I think you kind of said this earlier, but you're confident Hearts can do the business and get into the top six against Motherwell on Saturday?
Yeah, definitely do. I think, as I said, it's one that they need to, and I think it's one of those ones again. This is where the players have to understand how big these games are coming up. As I said, it's a must that you finish in the top six, because from a financial aspect as well. And if you don't, then all of a sudden the remainder of the season and the build up to the semi-final, the Scottish Cup, potentially the final, you're playing against teams that you don't. The way the league's split up, you don't want to be playing. You want to be playing against Hibs, Celtic, and Rangers, Aberdeen. You want to be playing against the top teams, especially after the split. And as I say, it keeps the supporters on side. It keeps the supporters emotionally invested. It keeps the supporters on that sort of upward trajectory to go to Hampden, as I say. So I said, these next couple of games for Hearts are massive in order to try and get in this top six.
The second game that you're talking about there, week on Saturday, Hearts are going to be taking on Aberdeen in semi-final. It's the first time the teams have met each other at Hampden since 1996, a game you were part of. It was a significant afternoon for Hearts. They ended a 10-year wait to participate in a major final. What are the first memories that come to mind about that day?
The strip. I can remember that.
That's funny. That's going to be my intro for the article. That's really funny.
That was, as I say, for me, that was one of the. As I said, for me, it was like that was one of my favourite strips as a Hearts player. As I said, and I think to wear that in a Scottish Cup semi-final, such a big game. As I said, it was the club had been, as I said, on that upward trajectory for since Jim had taken over, and to get to that cup final, it was just one of those days. It's everything you dream of was being a player. As I said, and supporting Hearts as a youngster, and watching Hearts and playing in semi-finals and losing, and playing in big games and losing. To be part of something like that and be part of the team to get to that sort of '96 cup final was great. As I said, when it was just one of those days that there's a number of moments that you can always remember back to. But as I said, that was a fantastic day for the club and for that group of players.
It was a huge Heart support that day. Spaces in the Aberdeen end. It looks like it's going to be a similar thing for this upcoming game. What was that like? I mean, I know it's a wee bit cliched, but did that kind of give you a lift, the driving in and seeing how many Hearts fans there were, and then walking out in the stadium?
Yeah, it always does, and it's back to that one about having the character to deal with it. As I say, and I think it's one of those ones where you've got to embrace that what Hearts supporters can give you. As I say, especially for such a major event. As I said, at Hampden, basically it was like 5-1. So it was basically a home tie for a semi-final of a cup. And as I said, hopefully the same again in 2 weeks. As I said, it's one of those ones where you come out, it gives you butterflies. It's like the hair stick up in the back of your neck, and all of a sudden you feel 10 feet tall, and you get a good start in the game, and you batten down the hatches, and you can get after teams. And as I said, it gives you a fantastic platform to go and win the game. You couldn't ask for a better opportunity, as I said, when it comes to a semi-final of a cup to have that sort of slight advantage, major advantage in my opinion.
Also, like that season, you played Aberdeen a fair few times, 4 times, I think. It'd been fairly even between years. Again, it's fairly similar for the sides going into this one. What kind of effect does that have going in, playing each other and being so familiar with each other going into a semi, and like on such a big occasion as well?
I think that there is a benefits, and obviously there's a downside as well. They know what you're capable of from an attacking point of view. As I said, and that's the same with the Scottish League at this moment in time. You play each other so many times that there's not really any sort of rocks unturned. As you said, when you're doing your stuff, as you said, when the coaching staff are doing their job properly, there's they're danger men. You know what they're good at. You know what their weaknesses are. And then, as I said, it's up to for me now, it's up to the players on Saturdays. It's the ones who can step up to be the difference makers. As I said, Aberdeen are going through a tough time after a fantastic start to the season. So, as I said, I think it's one of those ones where now we've got, an opportunity to get to a cup final. And I think it's such a big opportunity. We've got to grab it with both hands and, as I said, and really take it to them.
It was a fairly cagey first half back in that day in 1996. John Cahoon said afterwards that he was playing with the fear of making a mistake. Now, he obviously had a lot more of experience of failure than you at that point. But did you have a similar kind of fear going into the game?
No, and I think that was the biggest thing for us as young players.
You were 20, I should say.
Yeah, we were, as I said, relatively young at the time, as I said. But for us, we had this confidence and this sort of belief in ourselves, and that came down to how the gaffer and that. There we go. And that came down to where the gaffer and Billy and the senior pros gave us it. As I said, for us, it was like, this is why you play the game, and I think that's what's lost in the current game. As I said, it's opportunities to play in semi-finals and cup finals and challenge the best teams. So for us, it was just an unbelievable high. As I said, that group of players had been through sort of the BP Scottish Youth Cup route. So we'd been there. So as I said, we sort of grew into that sort of environment because we were successful as a youth team. And we knew within ourselves that on a given day, we were capable of beating anybody. And I think that's something that the management installed in us. And as I said, we became that sort of fearless. And yeah, we made mistakes, and there was times that we did get other teams got the better of us. But I think we had that sort of mentality then that we could bounce back and get on with it. But that day was one of those ones where it was, we're confident, we've got to do it. As I said, regardless of the level of opposition and how close the season had been, we knew, as I said, within ourselves that we deserved to be there, and we were as good as them, if not better.
And what did it ultimately take to win on that day? And like for this Heart side as well, going into this match, what does it take to sort of win on such an occasion?
A togetherness. I think it's a togetherness, a self-belief, and an understanding of what it means to to more than just us as a group of players. As I said, you look at the supporters there, you look at the people who spend their hard-earned money. As I said, if that doesn't motivate you as a player, then, as I said, you're maybe not in the right environment. Because, as I said, what these people and Hearts supporters specifically, as I said, these guys, as I said, go everywhere. As I said, for me, the away support and the travelling support, as I said, is phenomenal. So to be there at Hampden with all these people, I said, for me, as I said, that should give you everything you need to go and win the game. But a togetherness and a self-belief. If things start to go against you a little bit, you've got to have that ability to get through it, because you might not dominate the game for as long as you want. As I said, there will be spells where you have to defend properly and get men behind the ball and work for each other. But then we've got players good enough to go and unlock anybody and win the game. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Jim Jeffries, after the game as well, said that at half-time, he told you to have a go. He said he would back you guys regardless. Now, I know he's maybe talking about forward players more than yourself there, but do you feel that had an effect on your performance in the second half?
Yeah, it did. I think it was one of those ones. It's all very well looking back now. There would have been nerves there. There would have been a sort of fear factor. As much as we say we still had that self-belief, it's still a massive environment. And as I said, JC did indicate that there is a fear factor. You don't want to make that mistake on the semi-final. Because they said nobody remembers the losing semi-finalists. As I said, everybody, they said cup finals, you know who's in a cup final. Nobody really remembers who you beat in the semi-final to get there. So that was there and there. Jim Jeffries was him and Billy were masters of sort of motivational speeches at half-time and being able to get the last bit of anything out of any individual. And as I said, they managed to do that once again.
Yeah, I was speaking to your old teammate Pasquale Bruno earlier, and that's exactly what he said. He gave me the Italian word first, and we had to translate it. But he was telling me that he was a very good man manager and one of the best man managers that he had played with.
Both of them were, as I said, Jim and Billy.
He mentioned Billy Brown as well, I should say.
The two of them for me, as I said, were phenomenal human beings. But as I said, it was, you knew if you were doing things well, then, as I said, they would back you to the hills. But they weren't slow enough telling you to crack the whip. There was a few times that the hairdryer treatment came out and the fucking boots would get thrown about to change them. But that was then, and that was something that we could deal with. But as I said, they always had the players' best interests at heart in the club. As I said, both of them, as I said, were Hearts through and through. But yeah, whatever they say, you could trust them. If they believed in you, then you knew that they've got to have your back. So whatever happens, you go out there and you give 100%. And as I said, Jim and Billy would back you to the house. So as I said, for me, it was the phenomenal management team who, as I said, rightly got what we deserved in the 98 Cup final, not so much the 96 Cup final.
Yeah, exactly. But this was well, I'll ask this now because I was going to ask this later, but since you've said that, this as I said before, this ended a 10-year wait to get into a final. Did this feel like, even after the disappointment of the final, did that season feel like an important step towards what was the win in 98? Yeah,
I think it did. I think it showed that the club, the team was making progress. And I think you can see the following year we get to the League Cup final where we lost 4-3. So we're getting closer and closer. And I think back to that, what we spoke about earlier, it's about having that belief in the management team and then the players that are on the field. As I said, it does take time to build good squads and good teams, and that was a prime example from where we started with Jim and Billy to where we ended up. It was, as I said, it was a process, and as I said, we got our rewards in '98. But yeah, the '96 Cup final, from having such a high to get to the Cup final against Aberdeen, then as I said, you experienced the ultimate low a month later. But that's football, and that's what happens, and that was just one of those days where, as I said, everything they did right, and we just got an absolute running around. And as I said, that Rangers team were capable of doing that. And as I said, for us, it was part of our learning process. It was an experience for us as a group of players, really, really tough to take. But I think it set us in good stead for what happened over the next sort of 24 months and to accumulate in the 98 Cup final win. But that Aberdeen win, as I said, to break that like the first hoodoo for a number of years to win and getting a semi-final win and getting back to a cup final was, as I said, it was the start of the process.
And the kind of the match winner on the day really was John Robertson. After he came off the bench, he had some fitness issues that season, so he wasn't able to start the semi-final. There's a big cheer when he and Davy McPherson, I should say, who knocks it down for him for the opener, are coming on. Does that give the players a lift as well when players of that experience are coming on?
for sure.
And a proven goal scorer.
Yeah, as I said, Robbo, as I said, was a legend. He was a kid. He was a player I used to support as a kid. So yeah, you know that with the record that he's got against every team in the league, you know if you're still in the game and he's on the bench to come on, regardless of how fit he was, you know there's got to be chances. You know you've got to get opportunities, and as I said, 90% of the time when he gets half an opportunity, it's a goal. So yeah, when you see that happening, and you prior to the game, because back then it was only 3 subs. So back then, when you know that you've got that quality come off the bench, then you know that, yeah, you've always got a chance. If you're still in the game and wee Robbo's coming on the field, you've always got a chance, and that's how it worked out.
He just about gets the ball over the line. I've got a picture here. You're not in this picture, but you were very close by. You're just out the shot. Did you think it was over the line at the time?
Yes, yeah.
You see it clearly?
Yeah, clearly over the line. It's one of those ones where, yeah, I would say that, but yeah, it was over the line.
No, I think it was proven in the end. I was just wondering in the moment whether people knew or not, because I was at the other corner at the far end and I had no idea what had happened. Yeah. I just saw players celebrate and joined in.
That was it. That's what you can do. And as I said, there wasn't VAR back in that day, so it was just that. It was it. You just wheeled away, like giving it. Yeah, it was. And as I said, it was just by the slightest of margins.
Duncan Shearer came on, the Aberdeen's own veteran goal scorer, and he scored. You were right underneath that one, although Rousset was a mile out of his goal for it. That was in the day where semi-finals would go to replays, and I remember my thoughts at that time was, I'm going to have to come back here on a midweek to do all this again, and it was not a great game. So what was the feeling then? Because this was 3 minutes to go we're talking about.
Yeah, it's that's the one. It's say you've just experienced such a sort of, we've got that goal, we're in front, let's hold on. Yeah, as I said, back in the day, that there was a number of teams who have got top strikers. Shearer was a top striker. He was a handful. He was a bully. And as I said, he comes on and gets the equaliser, and you're thinking, being a Hearts supporter, as I said, it goes through your mind, but then you've got to have that ability to get rid of it. It's like, here we go again. As I said, it's like, for me, it's one of those ones where we've got to hang on. As I said, let's get out of here, make sure we don't lose. And that was it. I said, we'll probably have to come back here and try and do it again. But we were fortunate enough to go and snatch it right at the end. But yeah, as I said, that it's always difficult when you lose a goal so late in the game to try and stay positive. But as I said, having Pasquale and Gilles and Jim and Billy, as I said, they won't allow you to sort of put the head down and feel sorry for yourself. It was one of them ones, well, we're here, we've done so much, then let's dig deep and get something, as I say, to move forward.
Alan Johnson gets the winner in the end. You kind of mentioned it earlier about coming through as a group of young players. I've got a picture of you guys there as well. Alan Manus, yourself, Alan Johnson and Gary Locke.
Yeah.
What was that like coming? You said you just won the Youth Cup together. Jim Jeffries put a lot of faith in you guys. Added, as you mentioned, a lot of characters and experience and talent around you. But what was it like coming through as that young group?
Brilliant, as I said, and I think, as I said, for me, it was life-changing. I think for us, as I said, me and Alan McManus, best man at my first wedding. As I said, we lived together with my grandparents to start with. As I said, that group there was also others like Matt Bradley, Stuart Callahan, and Miles Hogarth, Roddy McKenzie. As I said, we were very, very close. We did everything together, as I said, and it's one of those ones that you friendship for life. As I said, we still keep in touch with everybody. But Sticky had an unbelievable talent. As I said, we were all different. As I said, me and Chalky were very, very similar, defensively strong. A couple would do anything for running through a brick wall for anybody. Lockie was a driving force who had quality in the middle of the park and was very, very unfortunate with injuries he had. But Sticky, Alan Johnson had an unbelievable knack of just getting beyond people and quality in the final third and scoring unbelievable goals. And as I said, that was an exceptionally talented group of players, as I said. And I think even before that, Tommy Harrison, Marvin Wilson, Gary O'Connor, like Hearts back then, their academy, the youth system was up there with the best. And we won the BP Youth Cup, I think, back-to-back years, as I said. So for me, it was a credit to the people in charge at the time, and to see so many come through into the first team in that group, I think was phenomenal to see, as I said. But Sticky, as I said, had an unbelievable talent.
I'm just looking up to see if it's the same year, but I think 1996 was a crazy year because there was the 2 cup finals. Yeah, his hat trick was in January that year. Hat trick at Ibrox.
Yeah.
There was I'm pretty sure the 4 red cards at Ibrox was that year. There was beating Celtic with barely a defence the week after. Right. It was a crazy, crazy year. It must have been a really exciting time to be part of all that.
It was great. It was phenomenal. There was so many roller coasters that year. It was just, as I said, it never stopped. It was just unbelievable. That 3-0 victory at Ibrox was just, as I said, phenomenal. As I said, we Sticky ran the show that day, and then the following time we went there, we get the 4 boys sent off. So it was just a real incredible year to be a part of. Unfortunately, the way it ended with the drubbing in the final was just probably summed up the full year. To be honest, there was just so many ups and downs. But as I said, that's football, and that's what makes you stronger, and that's, as I said, what gives you that sort of bouncing board to come back.
I have to ask, as I mentioned earlier, I spoke to Pasquale Bruno earlier. He was the man of the match in this semi-final, the sort of experienced head in between you and Alan Manis in the back three. What was it like? What was he like that day? First of all,
phenomenal. He played with, he was one of those guys who could play with his slippers and a pipe. And I think that
by that point he was. I think.
Yeah, I think it was like, as I said, me and Chalky had the legs. As I said, we were aggressive. As I said, we were his fucking pit bulls, and he was just the owner of the 2 pit bulls. And as I said, anything that we didn't get, anybody that we didn't kick, he did. So it was a great sort of the 3 are sort of complemented each other so well. Obviously, myself being left-footed, Alan right-footed. As I said, it was very, very comfortable back 3. And as I said, Pasquale would talk, and as I said, if we ever got in any sort of trouble, he'd be there to fucking back us up. And as I said, he would overstep the mark if he needed. We know what it was like. He had that sort of real grit, determination, and nastiness in him. He had no qualms about going over the top of the ball. As I said, but he was, as I said, unbelievable, calm, composure. As I said, that you could, typical Italian sweeper, as I said, and having had an opportunity to play with him and be part of a team with him involved was just, as I said, an unbelievable experience.
Like to throw his elbows about sometimes as well, but yeah, he played with some incredible teams. He was won the UEFA Cup, won the Coppa Italia twice, I think, as well. But he had a bit of everything, and he was unlike anything else in Scotland at that time. He was like a ball playing central defender.
Yeah, 100%. That was it. It was the Italian sweeper, and that's what he was. He came in, and he, as I said, the game was easy for him. He's seen everything, so calm and composed, never ever under pressure, as I said, and it would just be, as I said, so composed. But as I said, when he needed to be, he got fucking stuck in, and he would, as I said, fine elbows over the top of the ball. And it was one of these ones. Hey, no. Yeah, but as I said, I think he was phenomenal player.
Are you going to be tuning in for the semi-final?
Yes, I will be. As I say, I'll be an early start here, but yes, we will be up and at it for.
Oh yeah, it's going to be really early for you, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it will not be too bad. See, I think. Oh yeah, it will be actually because
it's 12:30 here, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Because my 2 boys, the 2 boys are going to supporters bus for Kinross, and I think they're leaving at 8:30. Right. So I think they've got a little bar opened at 9:30 for when they get through there. So yeah, it's at 12 o'clock. It's at 12:30, so that's 4:30 here. But yeah, that's next weekend. I've got no games to coach, so I'll get up with my daughter. My daughter sings a heart song, so we'll get up and we'll get that cracked on the TV.
Nice one. Enjoy, and thanks very much for joining us tonight, Paul.
No, anytime. Thank you very much.